Hi, my name's Ashleigh. Welcome to Tea Table Talk. I'm so excited to present to you our first in-person Tea Table Talk. This in-person conversation takes place in the west of Ireland around a cosy fire with a delicious and nourishing cup of chai tea made by Skye, who you'll meet in the moment and who's a member of the Bringing It Home community. Bringing It Home is an in-depth, year-long journey to rewilding your life, deepening your connection with nature, and creating regenerative culture. Here in this Tea Table Talk, 4 of us members of the Bringing It Home community, Skye, Peter, Flor, and myself, have come together in conversation to speak about cultural regeneration. Thank you so much for joining us, and I do hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I have. So now, for the next half an hour, I invite you to relax, get cozy, and perhaps get yourself a delicious warming cup of something as you join us around the fireside.
Margaret. Don't you want?
So welcome here to all of us on this beautiful fire, and anyone listening or watching to us. We are here to have what we're calling a tea talk, and I'm going to pass it over to Ashleigh in a moment to explain that, about regenerative culture. So we're going to sit here and have a bit of a yarn for about 30 minutes on regenerative culture. And a yarn is a word that I'm familiar with here in Ireland, where we're sitting right now, to have a good yarn together. So to have a good chat about something. And I also learned a very specific way in, maybe, to have a regenerative yarn from Tyson Yunkaporta, who's an Aboriginal Indigenous man from Australia, which, as I understand it, is to really invite in the complexity of reality into a conversation, rather than looking for one particular answer or a final destination in our conversation, to really invite in the complexity of what may be the reality in this moment of regenerative culture and for each of us. So we're here as a little part of the Bringing It Home community, which is a year-long deep dive into the 8 Shields teachings. And we have different roles in that. So we're just going to take a moment to each introduce ourselves. So my name is Skye, and I am one of the hosts of the program along with Peter. And I came here today from about an hour and a half away. We're in the west of Ireland, from just beside a different hazel woods that we're just beside here, called Oakfield, or Gortna Darach in Irish. So I'll pass it to any of you who'd like to introduce yourselves.
I can go next. Flor is my name. Living down here, South Galway, East Clare direction in the hills. A place called Crannog. I have the role of elder in the Bringing It Home, which I'm finding very enjoyable and heart-opening. And I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks, Flor. I'm Peter, and I woke up at Skye's place this morning, and I more usually live on Dartmoor in the southwest of England. I'm a co-host for the Bring It Home journey alongside Skye. And really grateful to be seeing a bit more of Ireland on this trip. Thank you to all my hosts for the warm welcomes and adventures so far.
Thank you. And I'm Ashleigh, and I'm actually a student, I suppose, on the Bring It Home course. And today I've come from County Wicklow, which is on the east coast of Ireland. And I'm just delighted to be here with Bringing It Home. I think it's the first time we've actually met in person, which is amazing. And as Skye mentioned, the idea of a tea table talk for any of you who haven't seen any of them, have normally been actually online. So it's a great privilege for all of us to actually be in person around a fire in Flor's lovely place here. So as I said, I'm a student on the course, and I've had the great privilege of being taught and guided by Sky, Peter, and Flor as an elder.
Thanks, Ashleigh. And it was Ashleigh really who inspired us to come together, drink some tea, and have a good yarn. And here we are in Ireland, where tea is really, I would say, an element of regenerative culture here. Because when I went and spent some time in California in H. Shields emergent courses, and this was something I had to learn, and someone would say, would you like a cup of tea? And in Ireland, that mostly is a kind of code for a social contract, is what I learned to kind of see it as when I lived there, which is that means you're going to sit down and have a cup of tea together and a bit of a chat. And what happened there was someone would just give me a cup of tea and then walk off, and I would be, oh, we're not going to sit and have a bit of special time together. So that really helped me to see a really important regenerative culture element that's present here in Ireland. So it's also within that we're having this tea here together, which is a cup of chai today that I made this morning with spices from many different countries. So giving thanks to the different plants that grow in many places, and this very privileged place we find ourselves in to have all the best in many ways from different parts of the world. And it also has some birch polypore in it, an artist's conch from Roscahill Woods, which is near where I live, with lots of good earthy medicinal qualities in it. So that's what we're going to be drinking, what will be nourishing us, one of the things nourishing us as we talk today. And just to give you a little flow of how this conversation will go, and it's going to be quite emergent, but we have a little flow, which is just to start with a bit of gratitude for the natural world and all the ways it supports us and teaches us and is part of us. And then we're going to have just a little bit of time, each of us, to just speak some words to what is regenerative culture for us in this moment. And then we'll be invited to just tell some stories from our lives of when we felt that to be true. So I want to give thanks for this beautiful Atlantic temperate rainforest that Peter and I went to see yesterday, called in English Brachlún, but as many of the place names in Ireland, they were originally, of course, Irish, and when they were anglicised, most place names weren't literally translated, so we've lost the meaning. But the Irish was there, which was called Brachlún, and so Peter and I were trying to work that out yesterday, and we got as far as the speckled meadow, the wood of the speckled meadow, but it didn't quite make sense. And so when we arrived here earlier and we said that to Flor, that we had been there, Flor said, oh, that's badger country. And he said, because broch, or how do you pronounce it? Broch, is badger in Irish. And then we thought, oh, it makes sense, it's speckled badger wood. So that was a lovely little connection and deepening of understanding of the story of that place. And when Peter and I were there yesterday, at one point, Peter spoke about the peace he was feeling there. We were standing beside an old growth oak there that was just covered in green lichens and beautiful ferns growing up on the branches and just moss, and we took a moment to both just be in that peace together when he said that. And what it brought up, I think, for both of us was just the peace in a place when the relationships between things have been able to flourish to their fullest, and this incredibly abundant, biodiverse climax ecosystem, and not just climax but also old growth.
It's the rooster!
Flor's chickens are after him.
That's
said the wolf after.
Yeah, it's got it. So yeah, the piece of what it is to be in regenerative culture, in that case, in a forest that was so embodying regeneration. One of the things we felt in there, the sensory things that we really enjoyed, was the feeling and the sound of dead wood kind of being compacted below our feet, because in that woodland there was so much dead wood was just allowed to decompose into the ground, into new life, and just what a beautiful sensation that was. So yeah, giving thanks to those places, those wilder places that have still been given sanctuary, that still exist here in Ireland. We have 1% native woodland cover, so it's a very precious thing. So with that in each of our hearts, I think I just want to invite us to just speak a few sentences right now. What does that term evoke? Regenerative culture, what might that be?
Well, from your introduction concerning rock, loon, wood, I'm conscious of out that door as you look through here is Derrimore or Derrymore. It's the big oak wood. Well, it's 40 hectares at the moment, but in time past it was connected right up into the hills to Derrybreen, which was Derrybrine, Brian Borough's wood, which ran down along the Slieve Teeth, down by the Shannon, right down to Killaloe. Massive oak wood. And there's moves around that being regenerated in our envisioning, but definitely in our hearts to try and protect what's here. Earlier we were in there, and for me regenerative culture is alive and well inside in that woods. There's loads of mushrooms making hay, having a good time. I saw turkey tail, there's birch polypore, and when you walk in there it's the sound of oak leaves crackling under your feet, sound of pigeon overhead, and there was a raven calling as well for a while. It was lovely. So regenerative in the sense of, for me, I've just spent an evening last night with a man who is struggling at the moment, and the best way I could help him was to try and help connect him to the nature, to the ground underneath, to the sounds, to the elements. We're in front of a beautiful fire here at the moment, and that allows for a lot of the baggage that we're carrying to be let go to it, and the fire will consume it and transform it. I believe we need spaces like that where people can get back into harmony with the nature. A lot of people that chose to live here in South Galway, East Clare, they came from concrete jungles, from lots of rules and regulations to find a place, and when they did, they valued it. And I think they helped the locals who had lost sight of the gifts that they had to reevaluate what they had around them and kind of wake up to trying to protect it. So that's where we are at the moment. We're in that kind of space, and the culture as well, the music, the stories that are told, and we still have guys who make a living telling fairy stories around here. So, yeah, so that's my most recent memory of regenerative culture.
Could you share a bit about the space we're in as well, Flor? Because
Yes.
this is a very special place.
Okay, so here we are it's called Hogan, and we're on the land, and we call our place Cranog, which Cranog to a separate word is the young tree, but Cranog together means something else. It's a hidden, safe place, which our ancestors would have built in marshes which is just down here, or on lakes, so they were safe. Their loved ones could be safe, their animals, the most precious ones could be safe. And there'd be a secret way to it, and might be stepping stones underneath the water that only if you lived there you knew where they were. But here, this space, the Hogan, I was in the Four Corners, it's in the Midwest, and I came across in Canandaigua a native man.
This is in America.
In America, yeah.
North America.
A native man in a structure like this, 8-sided log structure with a doorway on the east, and he was making sand pictures appear as he worked. And he answered questions that made sense to him, silly questions that came to him from a crowd that had arrived. He just ignored. He didn't waste his breath on them. It was a big lesson for me just to kind of watch how he operated. And he was very deliberate and very creative, very peaceful, and he brought a lovely air of calm to the space, so much so that I said, I want to build a space like this when I get home. So here we are, all the pallets, it's all made from pallets. All the pallets are American oak that I gathered down through the years. The windows that I'm looking at, they came from the house I was born in, and I was born inside one of those windows a few years ago. And when they were redecorating the house at home, I managed to take these, and they fitted exactly in the pallet. There was no work to be done. Just remove the boards and in they went. Just synchronistic. And I believe that if we move in a way that is in harmony with nature, in the flow, that whatever our wishes or desires are, if we truly kind of expect our prayers to be answered, they'll be there for us to collect on our journey. We don't have to fret about it once we have envisioned it. They'll be there. And I think synchronicities are a way of nature saying, pay attention here, you know, it's something here, it's something that's here for you, like, and stay present. And the key for me is to not get lost in the past and get depressed, or in the future and get anxious, but to stay present and alert, aware, and grateful for all the abundance. Yeah. So thanks for the question.
I have one more question about this place.
Okay.
Like, I know many things happen in this Hogan, and there's I think a kind of a physical infrastructure to culture, actually, that supports culture. And so I'm curious, what has happened in this space, and what has this space fostered?
Right.
Yeah, kind of connections.
It's really, there's been women's circles, men's circles, parties, birthday parties, wild parties, adult parties. It's also been the camp kitchen for people camping, 20 people at a time. Storytelling happening around the fire here. Food being cooked on the fire. Events for weekends. Yurts and tents. People playing, lots of play. This really engenders play. We have a half door on it because lots of dogs sometimes, and when you're cooking you want to keep them outside, and also keep it safe from some of the smaller kids that be running around playing wildly. So it's an opportunity to express that wild nature. I'm looking at the wall in front of me, and there is a slate painting that a good friend from Kivar did, Ashleigh. And it is like the horn god, and he's standing between two dolmens, and he is just lapping up the energy of the moon as the night settles in. So this place at night looks amazing because these two windows look like eyes, and this is like a hat, and you wonder what kind of creature is that in the corner as you're walking through the fields, and you're drawn to it. And it's been a place where the 27 men sat around in a circle here sharing, and there was one, I remember a young man one time sharing a beautiful piece, and he was honoured by an elder. What do you want? And he says, I want a hug. How would you like it? A hug from every man individually. So it was 37 of us. So this whole circle of hugs happened. And while we were doing that, the elder taught us a travelling song. He was from Vancouver Island, Grandfather Coyote, and he taught us that song. And each of us, while we sang the song, were just waiting, like excitedly, to be able to hug this young man. And the last man he hugged in that circle was his dad, and that was really precious for all of us to see. You know how this is what this space offers. You know, when we circle up around the fire, we create safe space. Can do for regeneration to happen, for nurture to happen, for hearts to open, for tears to fall, for grief to be held. Yeah, so all these things have happened here, both for men, women, and children, and the other beings. We invite the other beings when we leave in here to have the space, and we leave fire for them when we leave. So.
Thank you, Flor. What's really with me from that is that moment you said where the last person he happened to hug was his father, and I felt it in my body and how we all feel when healing is happening, and we recognize and acknowledge that together, those moments.
Mm-hmm.
I can follow what you shared, Flor, with so culture for me, I've come to understand culture as that which creates connection, and that the connections can be understood in three ways: connection to self, connection to our fellow human beings, and connection to all the beings. So connection to greater nature, acknowledging that we are part of nature. And yeah, I'd like to tell the story of something you just mentioned, that we were all out in the woods before we started. So the way we started this was to go outside and have what we call a sit spot. So time to just sit in one place, somewhere in wilder nature. So it was in the lovely Drummond Woods behind us here that Flor just spoke to. Just to drop out of our minds, be in our senses, and really be in connection. And what happens for me when we do, specifically, I would say collective sit spots. So when I do one by myself at home, it feels very different from knowing there's other people close by also doing that practice with me. So for me, really, those three ways of looking at connection were really present. So it was a connection to each other because we all went out, we were doing it together, we had this shared value. Actually, I know it's something we all value. And also doing it together helps us. I always love that word Sangha, that community of practice, and how that changes things. Accountability, being a really important piece for me in regenerative culture. Accountability to each other, to ourselves, to all of life, to show up as best as we can, and to show up for connection. And so we went out, and the raven call we had a little bit of a giggle about was me holding the time container for us. And so that is how we called each other back, and I got some lovely raven responses when I called. And what happens for me when I'm out there sitting is I come back to myself. It's like all the tendrils, especially all the stimulation from the human world, it's like they come back to myself, and I can drop in and feel my body in connection in a way that I can't when there's more, quote unquote, maybe distractions from the human world going on. And I can feel my body, and I find my place of ease. And I mean, there's a lot of science out there even about this now, like connection to nature and all the ways that helps us relax and is healing for us. And to come into heightened connection with the rest of the natural world around me and really build that intimate emotional connection. So for me, I suppose that practice is kind of an embodiment of regenerative culture, where I'm coming into connection with self, the natural world around me, and each other, because we're sharing that practice. And I would say back into connection, because for me, modern society has, there's a lot of fundamental ways that modern society works that is actually based on disconnection, like capitalism and consumerism, and many different things. So and sit-spa is such a precious practice to me. Peter and I also went out and had a sit-spa pre-dawn yesterday to celebrate this time of year we're in, because we're in Imbolc right now, it's called here in Ireland. That acknowledgement that things are stirring in nature, things are waking up slowly. We're here almost in February, and it was a really, really sweet time to be out on the land. And actually a fox walked between 2 to 3 meters right by us without recognizing seemingly that we were even there, which has been my dream for a long time, to be at a sit spot and have the fox at dusk or dawn and have the fox just walk by in that way. So that's the story I'm going to tell right now.
The story that wants to come through me is very related to these Atlantic temperate rainforests that are at our back. I'm in a co-housing community group in Dartmoor where I live, and we are hoping, planning, dreaming, working very hard to buy some land on Dartmoor, and part of my vision for that is to restore Atlantic temperate rainforest, oak woodland on that land, which is a many decades, if not centuries, project of restoring the deep old growth woodland that has been so cleared from England as well as Ireland. And I'm noticing that as part of that land restoration, first there needs to be a huge culture restoration for us, 8 of us at the moment, to come together and learn to share and work together and trust each other and create patterns that support us all to, to be in trust with each other and to get our needs met in that group. And we have a lot of meetings, and on the way here I was on my phone checking messages from some friends on that group about a meeting we have tomorrow that we're planning together. And we've put a lot of care and attention into creating this culture that will support us to be our best selves and support each other in that. And in the same way that the rainforest takes a long time for the oak trees to grow, and then the smaller trees and the mosses and lichens to slowly come in and spread throughout the woodland, so it is with human culture that we need to develop things and build that trust and that understanding of each other and the patterns, these patterns of culture, like starting off with gratitudes and check-ins at the start of meetings, so we can all land well and understand each other, and allowing space for grieving and for emotions to be shared, and understanding the different parts of ourselves that show up in different ways, the part of me that is scared or critical, that isn't the whole of me, and that self-awareness and sharing that with each other. It just takes time to develop this culture, cultivate. It's kind of a gardening of culture, and for trees to grow, for old growth to come back, both in our culture and our land, takes time and care and attention. And maybe this farm we're going for isn't the one that we'll end up with, but I'm treasuring the journey of being in good culture with other people in the group, and it's also frustrating, and I want things to go faster or slower or differently. And a large part of that growing together into community is about seeing when to let go and when to hold fast to my truth, and which parts of me want to do either of those things. I guess that's the same in the forest. I was having a sit spot there, and one of the things I really noticed is that the trees, they allow things to just grow on top of them. And that's kind of how the forest works. There's all this support and allowance, and that's an important part of a regenerative culture, to allow and support different parts of ourselves. And it's been a 3-year journey already, and it's going to be at least a year and a half more before we maybe buy the farm, and beyond that it's going to be a different journey, but still the same journey of consciously and intuitively designing culture and land and patterns of both, looking after both land and culture to support us all and future generations of all beings.
I'm just noticing how my heart is warmed listening to you, Peter. Yeah. And I also noticed that a lot in the woods yesterday, just examples of culture of allowance, trees growing on each other and just together, and And I'm wondering if anyone would like some more tea before we go on.
I'd love some more tea.
I would, if there's enough.
I'm loving the image, Peter, that you had there, the tree, and allowing things to grow on it. And I'm also thinking about all the life underneath that we don't see. It's even deeper in a sense than what we see above. That's, I think, resonating with me in terms of cultural regeneration, repair, connection, is that support system. One, when we look at nature, how it supports all the life around it, even when something dramatically changes, it will adapt and change so it can support and balance in some way. Whereas I think human, how we have created our culture, there's been a lot about competition, ego, the survival of the fittest, and this attitude that potentially doesn't serve us all the time. There are obviously times to push and strive forward in a very strong, powerful way, but there's what's resonating with what I've heard from all of you in terms of what resonates in terms of cultural regeneration is that idea of connection, trust, and even that idea of holding, and that the holding and support can be something as fierce yet as warming as a fire, and being around it, or the sharing of the tea together. And sometimes I think we forget in human culture that the power can sometimes be in those gentle moments. Like even say where I'm coming from in terms of the tea table talk, this energy of this conversation seems so much more alive and real in many ways than some of the conversations I've had on the tea table talks that are on a screen. And not so much that they're more real, but there's a connection that can't be potentially made through the screen. There's another element, which is all the senses are enlightenment, that we can feel each other's presence. I can feel the warmth of the fire. I'm sharing tea that Sky you gathered and made. So there's a support and care and a nurturing feeling. And then for me, something that's very rich in an experience that we wouldn't have potentially had if we had met on screen and to have this same conversation. So in a sense, that's what's resonating for me. Those really important times to remember to come together, to knock on your next door neighbour, to invite them for a cup of tea, or just to, if you see someone weeding their garden and you've a bit of time, just to go out, and those little moments can create just shared experiences that can make you feel whole or heard, or just, I think we underestimate the presence of other beings, even just around us. Actually, just one other thing that you mentioned about the stories of the richness of fairy stories still here in this country, and there was a bit of a giggle from us, but actually when I was out at this sit spot, at one point I noticed the sound of the birds were to the back of me, and I wanted to turn around, and there was a part of me that goes back to sometimes our default in culture: should I? Is it right to turn around? And I stopped myself and thought, there's no right or wrong. And as I turned around, there was the start of a primrose. And straight away I started to think about the fairies, because in Irish culture anyway, the primrose is said to be either the gateway to fairies, or that you'll see a fairy. So even that, I think the idea of magic and play, that you brought, the importance of believing in the unseen and bringing playfulness is something that's resonating for me in terms of cultural repair and regeneration.
It's interesting, like just really enjoying the conversation, and then it brought me to think about the word yarn, which is all these threads brought together. And what I'm noticing in the conversation is like we're bringing in all these different connections, which is, I suppose, one way of describing storytelling is like all the connections between different parts of life, and the more we speak to it in different ways, it's like within me this yarn is being rewoven, and that feels really, really good. Body, they're really bringing so much warmth and just love, actually, and really expanding my heart. Something we do in the Bringing It Home program is we ask our elders at the end of some time together, a journey we've gone on together, is to offer an elder's reflection. So I'd love to ask you, Flor, just to, on the spot, just to kind of, if you could put some words to that yarn that we've brought together through our conversation today, what might those words be?
I think delight, a lot of delight. Delight, inside delight at reconnecting to our inner child. That part of us that knows how to play, that part of us that still believes in fairies, that part of us that needed support, that needed encouragement, needed to be told they were great, and to acknowledge the people that were those, I suppose, godsends in our lives that did that for us, that saw the things that we did well and encouraged us, and to honour them. It's brought us to the place where we all are seeking further connection. We want to reach out, we want to open our hearts more, we want to be there to support others. We want to deepen our connection, like you were talking about, the connection to nature. And the best way we can do that is to connect to ourselves, to allow ourselves to be with ourselves. I had the experience this morning, like I'm doing the artist's way, and writing the 3 pages in the morning. So I'm doing this, and I'm feeling my feet are cold, my knees are cold, my elbows are, the table's really hard, and I'm going, well, I can fix that. So I put a cushion under my feet, straighten my body, and move things around. So I thought, oh, that's so much better. And I thought, a simple thing like being conscious of my body and what made my body feel better allowed me to be more creative. in my flow, there and then at that writing. So it was a lesson for me like that. You know, if there is something not right, rather than enduring through it or pushing it down or using energy to suppress that so that I can do what I'm supposed to be doing, to fix it. You know, so that was, I think that's what regeneration is about, is fixing things, supporting, so as we go back to a better place, back into a healthier place, being around people that will support us, being around situations that will inspire us, being around our ancestors in a conscious way, that we remember what they've left for us, and we may remember what we can leave for the generations coming after us. Yeah.
And we'd like to finish with a song.
I just want to appreciate Flor and this place for hosting us, and feeling the forest, the woodland, the wild at our back, and the culture in here and in front of us, in front of me. Yeah, just feels a really special place to be doing this today. Thank you for all the years and love you've poured into this land, and Marion and lots of other people as well. But you're here right now, and thank you. This song we're going to share is by Anna Richardson, the Oak Tree Song. She's a writer who's written lots of songs of different trees. She lives in the southeast of England and runs the Children's Forest, which is a group looking to plant woodlands with children involved in the planting and the maintenance for all the future generations in a good way. So the Oak Tree Song.
Go, 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 go. King of trees in your crown of gold, you are the door to worlds unseen, in winter bare and in summer green.
From gold to green and gold runs more. Your leaves will turn before they fall. When twice we've worn your golden crown, each season's harvest come tumbling down.
Oh, go, 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 go. King of trees in your crown of gold, you are the door to worlds unseen, in winter bare